Hello and welcome to the next live streaming panel discussion here at the VCX conference. I am so absolutely pleased to be joined by such an amazing group of industry professionals and thought leaders as this might be, I don't know, a panel discussion of the season for sure. I'm just honored to be here. We're going to be talking about AV as a service offerings that are attractive to businesses. And from my top left, we have Charmaine Torruella, Global AV Service Partner at VCX and Chairperson of the AVIXA Diversity Council. Charmaine, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so glad that you're here. Tim Albright, man needs no introduction, but founder and host of AV Nation. We have Mark Coxon, who is a brilliant mind in the industry and also the technology sales director at Tangram Interiors. We have, what? Why are you laughing?
I couldn't believe that was my intro. That's awesome. I didn't know I was a brilliant mind, but I'll take it.
You're a brilliant mind in the industry. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, good. Tom, I don't know what to say. If I don't say you're brilliant, you're going to be offended. But Tom,
I am
a brilliant mind in the industry, man who needs no introduction.
Yeah, a man who does need an introduction.
Okay. He is the director of industry outreach and media channels for NSCA, and also formerly known as Media Mogul, Media Mind, editor at large. And also we have Cindy Davis, the beloved contributing editor for AV Technology and Systems Contractor News Magazine. So we're going to have a blast. I'm Michael Lisi. I'm with Wolf Vision. And wow, what an event we've had today. So much good conversation. I can't wait to go back and watch everything I couldn't be a part of because that was another event. So let's dive right in. I'm going to kind of follow the way Tim does it because he does it so well. And we're going to do a little round table. I'm going to throw some discussions out on the table. I'm going to throw it to one of you, and then we can all attack it like wild dogs. And then we'll come out and see how things land. So talking about AV as a service offerings that are attractive to businesses. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and maybe just throw this one to Tom. What are some challenges that businesses face when managing AV technology? And the main burden I want to try and get out today is, do businesses care about our desire to offer them AV as a service offerings? And if they do care, why? Like, what can we do to make AV as a service attractive to businesses? Because we're talking a lot about it in our industry, but how many resellers have really been able to take it off the ground and make it fly? There's a lot of good value. We just got to find it. So I'll start with that one. What are some challenges that that businesses are facing right now as it pertains to AV technology?
Well, I mean, I think we're talking about it at exactly the right time, right? Because I think one of the big reasons that customers are interested in an as a service model is because of the value proposition that it offers them, right? So a lot of customers nowadays don't have that upfront capital to invest in a major project. Also, they're not really thinking about, getting the technology in the way that a traditional integration company might be thinking about selling the technology. The customer's thinking about a business outcome, right? So they're really interested in investing over a period in a solution that's going to lead them not to own, some kind of spectacular equipment with amazing features, but to deliver business metrics that they're interested in. Maybe it's traveling less. Maybe it's better customer attrition, that sort of thing. But they're interested in business metrics. And if an integrator can provide a solution that offers them good value over, let's say, 3 years. So you buy a project and it's going to last you about 3 years. But if you invest in an as a service solution and over those same 3 years, it costs only like 90% of whatever the project would have cost. And now you're also getting continual assurance of technology being updated and consistent and reliable. That's a huge value for customers. And it's a challenge for integrators to deliver it. But I mean, the value is remarkable, especially now.
You put a little Easter egg in there that somehow if you pay for it over 3 years instead of day one, it only costs you 90%.
No, I'm saying, so what I'm saying is that's one of the challenges for an integration company, right? They need to price it such that their customer can recognize that over, let's say, a 3-year period, they're going to spend less money.
Right.
That's going to be appealing to them. And that's also a challenge for an integration company. They need to make sure that, when the customer does their due diligence to really invest in the amount of money that they would spend on an as a service solution over a period of time, whether it be 3 years or 5 years or whatever it is, they need to see that value. And that's a challenge for an integration firm.
Yeah, and so with Barracks and Tangram, I mean, Charmaine, I'd like to toss this over to you, and then I want to go to Mark and see what are your thoughts on this, and then I want to go over to Tim and Cindy.
Well, AV as a service is very relevant, especially now, right, with COVID-19 and the situation at hand. What you have is a lot of organizations that were going to go ahead with projects and expansion, and now they have to rethink the budget, right, because of what kind of financial pitfalls they experience. So AV as a service comes in handy for that, helps them manage through the remainder of this year, and helps them with pretty much assessing and planning a better budget for 2021 based on how the AV land platform is going to look next year. So
That's two. So Tom says we can maybe save some money. You're mentioning that they can start to more flexibly budget based on service instead of upfront capital investment. Mark?
Yeah, it's OpEx over CapEx, basically. So they're not taking that capital expenditure. They're losing that capital expenditure that they would use to integrate a room. They're using an integrator to manage it all for them, which is utilizing less of their resources. So another thing that's happening is now with this situation, they're probably going to have to do furloughs, right? They've already furloughed people. They have lots of a technology staff. Right now, they're going to have to lean on a partner that can do it all in one, do the integration, bundle the integration with the service for 3 years, all in one, manage it for them, manage any of the fixes along the way at the end of that contract. Also say, okay, we can upgrade to this, and here's the renewal. And that takes a lot of burden off organizations and their team, because a lot of the teams and the shared services department, they're managing a lot of different parts of the technology for their organization, right?
Yeah, so you added to what Tom said, but you both have echoed the same thought, that it's not just the hardware. You're getting everything in a pretty bow. So the service, the installation, the programming support, everything they're going to need to get them through the next 3 years in a very kind of turbulent, economy and business environment. They can kind of make that a monthly payment. Okay, the next 36 months, I'm going to devote this much to my technology, and I know I'm going to be able to get what I need, and then I'm going to go focus on something else, and I'm not going to spend my capital on the front end.
Right. So the tangible and the intangible benefit, right? The intangible benefit, I'll focus on something else, repurpose my team on other things that we need to do and should be doing because I'm taking care of this right now. So, yeah.
Good. Mark, what would you add to that? Anything?
Yeah, I'm going to yes and on what was there. I mean, obviously turning this into an operational cost and delivering the service is a huge advantage of the two. I will say that I don't think that that's what differentiates AV as a service from other things, though, because we've had leases that could turn purchases into an OpEx expenditure. We've had managed service contracts for a long time in the industry where if somebody wants to do an outsourced model for technical help, they can do that. And those two things in themselves, although they could be part of a bigger AV as a service plan, I don't believe really make AV as a service what it is. And I think, when we look at our opportunities for AV as a service, we have to look at, some type of flexibility in the system itself, and then some type of consumption-based model, right? Because as what has happened over the last few years, we talk about COVID and all these things, but our last few years in AV, if we've been paying attention, have been building the tools that make AV as a service finally possible. Virtualization is one of those things, all the cloud-based opportunities we have now for things like our codecs and our conferences. The other thing that's being virtualized, we're seeing things like DSP that used to be tied to a box being virtualized. We're seeing control systems be virtualized where you can run, a Docker container on a server that talks to anything on the network and now controls from there. And you don't have to buy, a black box control system for every single room that's working for 3 minutes to turn on the system in that whole day. Why not have some computer somewhere that has tons of processing power, parallel processing power, that can light up all those different rooms through the network. The virtualization and the ability of everything to become an endpoint on the network makes our AV systems infinitely flexible. And then this is where we can, the reason it's cheaper isn't because we come up with some weird way to finance it or any of those type of things over time. The reason it should be cheaper is because we're not buying a one for one every single room. We're buying a one for how many instances of a meeting are going to be running at this given time. And I heard somebody one time liken it to video, like the voice over IP. We know I could have 200 lines, but at any given time, 30 calls are only going in the business. Why am I going to buy 30 licenses? Why am I going to buy 100 licenses? I only need 30. Right. So if we're paying attention as an industry, where the other place we can add value and where we can actually make this cheaper without having to get some weird, deal from a manufacturer or any of these kind of things, is we take advantage of this virtualization. And part of that may be even us looking at a data center type model where we actually stack these boxes that are doing these instances in a co-located center somewhere, and we serve those services from our infrastructure. So it might be, you might see AV companies, the smart ones, start to develop infrastructure that they sell to all their clients and leverage across campuses.
You got me. I wish I could have been in the last one about software-defined AV, because Zoom. What is Zoom? I mean, all this collaboration is servers sitting in Google Farms somewhere, and we're all just using the software, and we're paying for play, and we're engaging a software that's there's an applet on our computer, but most of the hosting and all the bridging is in the cloud. And you got to think like, what else could we do that's collaborative like this, that enriches this experience, makes it cooler, better, faster, more real, more interactive, but it's a service and you're just paying for it, and you're engaging it through the internet, but it sits in the cloud. I mean, it's kind of what you're talking about, but you're almost talking about, doing the same thing, but on-prem. So if you had your own Zoom-ish product that sits on a network and lets people consume what they need, and maybe you only pay for what you use, something like that.
That's called, the tricky term for that, Michael, is called private cloud. They call that private now, which is just the new way to say on-prem.
Yes, sorry, private cloud. It sounds like
and just to interject a little bit, so AV as a service, yes, is all those things, but it's so much more. So that's the other thing we have to look at also. It's not just the Zoom, colos and data servers. There's other ways to provide AV as a service. When people say, what is AV as a service? I say, what do you need it to be? You can pretty much, and that's the truth. It's not something that's specifically coined into these particular areas. AV as a service now could be meeting support. It can be streaming services. There is AI that's tying into that now. It's really, blossoming into something much bigger than we even anticipate.
With everybody worried about whether everyone working from home is actually working, like I could see AV services kind of like productivity monitoring. Like, are you actually doing stuff? Like, are you using the collaborative tools to get something done? All right, Tim, I'll toss to you. What else can you contribute there? But I'm still asking, and I may be asking this on behalf of our audience. I know we think these might be valuable reasons to the business. Have you had businesses coming to you saying, I need to find a way to get technology, and I need to keep the capital in my bank, and I want one throat to choke, and I don't want to babysit this? Are you hearing this from a lot of customers? Yeah.
The integrators we're talking to, they are having to educate their customers, right? Because the current business client, and we'll break it up here into a couple different categories. One is Fortune 500 corporate America, right? The other one is going to be education. The other one is government. Government's not touching this right now with a 10-foot pole because of certain requirements for monitoring and getting it outside of their network, which always makes the government nervous. All right, so let's take that off the table and put it over here. If somebody really smart figures out a way to do that without tunneling into the DoD, then they can make a whole lot of money. Education and corporate then is what you've got. You've got folks who have been used to doing networking as a service for a long time, and we've talked about the coming together of AV and IT and how AV as a service is just another iteration of IT. It is. However, you have an entire customer base who is used to getting their network, their servers as a service or whatever for years. but they don't realize that we can do it with AV. So there's the education part first and foremost. Hey guys, this is possible, right? You take the RFP and you look at the RFP and the request for proposal, and you put together, and Charmaine puts it together, and holy cow, it's a $3 million AV system. So she has a choice at that point. She can simply respond to the RFP and give them a proposal, or she can do a step further, which is, yes, this is $3 million. I understand that. However, it could be X amount of dollars per year instead of you've got the CapEx. You've obviously already gone through the budgeting process. Education wise, you pass the bonds or whatever you need to do on that end. You've got the capital. What if we flipped that though and made it an operational expense, and then they educate the client? So they're already looking for a solution, right? They've got the business reason. They know they've got a problem to solve, but the way that we're solving it as an industry needs to change, and part of that step is educating them that it's even possible.
Yeah, I agree. I think you nailed that one, Cindy.
Oh, this conversation's been great. I did an interview just last week with higher ed who opted to not do AV as a service and bought a huge amount of endpoints for the classrooms because they did not want to have licensing fees. They wanted to know exactly what they were buying, and I can only guess is that the integrator didn't know how to pitch it, or actually didn't even know the model.
Yes and no. I'll say for the education sector, which is kind of a little different, the education sector usually tends to bring in their own AV people for the most part. So they do prefer to just buy it and figure it out and use that staff to, do whatever. And they're not always so apt to looking at, doing that AV as a service. We'll buy it. This is the budget we're given. Great. We have this team. You guys, that's it. So it's for the higher ed guys. Normally, that's kind of what they would do. Not always into that AV as a service model because they have those people in there.
I want to throw in one more to contribute, though. I mean, my own reasoning, I think, is if you look at how many organizations end up cutting funding for projects and then not having what they need because they never got the commitment and the buy-in on the front end. So, I mean, I've worked with so many colleges and universities and businesses where, you get the phone call, and we're not salespeople trying to get people to buy stuff. We're working with somebody on a project, and we've spent time because they were planning on doing something, and then all of a sudden they go, oh, CFO decided we just can't, we're not going to do it. It's going to get pushed off. We can't. Or how much complaining have we heard from technology managers saying, I don't have the tools I need. I got stuff that's dying on the vine. I got projectors that are out of date. I got displays. I got VGA cables in half my meeting spaces, and there's no money to fix it. And it's like, well, why is there no money to fix it? Why wasn't that budgeted in? Everything's done as I need money today. Why don't we go do something? And if you make a commitment over the next 3 to 5 years, at least the funding to accomplish what you need from a technology perspective will be there. It doesn't have to be a constantly beg mom and dad to fund my next room or get this next projector. If you move into that model and you systematize your updates and your technology management, then suddenly I think you can actually create a lot more just continuity, like business continuity from a technology perspective. Would you agree?
I was going to jump in here for a second, Michael, because the question, like you asked him if he had customers asking for this, and I mean, unfortunately, multitasking here. I wrote some article maybe as a service a couple of years ago, and during that, I was starting to get emails from customers, and I can't say who this gentleman is specifically, but somebody works for a federal government, and was talking about AV as a service themselves, had contacted me on this and said, AV as a service leveraging true network protocols, Ethernet level 3, and hanging AV over as just another service on my network that exists everywhere, I'm in. they're talking about this, and they see what we are afraid to admit as an industry. And I want to read this part because this is how customers see us, and why they want to see this. He said, this requires a tremendous amount of flexibility when looking at and providing the best possible, most cost-effective solution. The only way to reach this type of AV as a service, in my opinion, is a huge disruption, since AV design firms, AV integrators, and AV manufacturers are very satisfied with the current build the empire monster control system, complex audio and video routing systems.
He said that live
And in the
on
room,
the stream.
And in the room, installed a touch panel that typically requires an IT AV person to navigate. For me, I want my users to walk into a room, see a simple device that looks a lot like what they have at home. And this is somebody that runs hundreds of AV environments. They are begging for this. But our business models as integrators, in many ways, we are manufacturer driven. We have a specific relationship with this manufacturer where we can make 50 points selling this black box that we know they can't shop on Google. And that's what we want to lead with. And that's what we put in our engineers toolbox and the training we send them to. And we say, we don't care what the customer wants. But at some point, the IT world is going to say, if AV is just an endpoint on the network and we're distributing data over the network and nobody else is offering this, why don't we take it? And this has been coming for a while.
I'm tongue in cheek about this though, because your comments are taboo for the industry.
Okay,
like, oh,
but he just said something.
That is norm.
Go ahead, Charmaine.
No, I was just laughing.
Okay.
It's so true. It's very true. So I came from the IT world originally. And what I've learned 10 years into the AV world, 20 years in the tech sector total, is that AV runs from project, and most of my clients that follow me runs from project to project, widget to widget. They're always using the same guys over and over again. No imagination. I need to have you first stop talking to me about how many projects, how many widgets. Second, start talking about my roadmap. Look at me as an enterprise and try to fix my problems there instead of how many rooms, how many items you can sell me. Basically talk to the right people. That's the other problem with the AV world also. Not everyone that you talk to makes the decision for that service. AV as a service can be held in the IT director's, lap, or the multimedia director, CTO's lap, not just the AV guy that most of us talk to person. They don't hold that decision. You have to also engage with the right decision makers. And we don't do that enough. And we also don't talk the right language for a service solution. We're not looking at it that way. So we have to change that. I see Marcus smiling like from ear to ear. It's like, so you must agree.
Well, I mean, the conversation about software defined, if only we were more software defined already. Because, software developers, when they go meet with a customer, they don't start with, let me show you my custom software that doesn't exist yet. They start with, what are you trying to do? We can build something, but what is the workflow? What is the means? I mean, what are you trying to accomplish? And then maybe we can talk about designing something. But that, like you said, Charmaine, that's not how we've done it with AV. We go in and say, I'll do a shootout. I'll show you. Why don't you come to my showroom and I'll show you a bunch of stuff. Maybe something will shine and you'll like it. You'll buy it. Okay, I'm gonna toss a. This is what I was saying, and I didn't want to disrupt the conversation, Tim, but got off on a panel discussion with Joey D'Angelo, Randy Tritz, Craig Park. Basically, they unanimously said, pretty much, that though maybe 20% of their projects are still, an AV system of some kind, 80% of their projects, and it's accelerating away, are just a computer managed by the end user's IT department, or it's software. This is where they're going to spend their money. They're going to move toward more Zoom type stuff, and Joey said emphatically, and they're perfectly happy buying and installing their own NUCs, their own computers, whatever, Lenovo servers or whatever, and they're done with playing the game of, having to, discuss why they don't want a massive rack in their conference rooms anymore. They're just done with. They're over it. They're looking at, and Joey said the number one thing he's designing into his projects right now is USB extenders. That's where his line drawings are USB extenders. So, okay, how does AV as a service get built around customers buying computers, AV extenders, and USB peripherals? And we're going to build a model around that.
So something that Mark
amongst
said,
themselves.
he mentioned the fact that a lot of the tech companies now are already kind of going down this road. It's an endpoint, right? 20 years ago, and I'll let whichever company wants to fight this out, because there's two or three of them that can make the claim that they had the first RJ45 on the back of a device, right? I'm not going to get in that fight. They can have that fight over there on the virtual show floor of InfoComm. But roughly 20 years ago was a bit when we started to see that, right? And it was everything from monitoring to doing software, firmware updates, and you could configure it with this. And now we are here today where you have legitimately systems where you can ingest audio and video signals onto the network. You can manipulate those signals on the network. Mark mentioned the fact that you have DSPs and control systems, on the cloud, and you can deliver them to a display device on the network. That gets rid of one of the most centerpiece, one of the keystones of a legacy AV system, and that's the matrix switch. Okay. It gets rid of the scaling switch. It gives whichever piece of equipment, whichever one you think you needed, you now no longer need. Now these have become endpoints, and the delivery mechanism is the network. And who owns and who controls that network? Not us. Right? Now, we can have a conversation about creating our own private networks, and that's absolutely viable, and especially when we get into AV over IP, which is not this session. However, with 10 gig networks, and they will eventually get there, these devices are nothing more than network appliances, right? Yes, it's a camera. Yes, it's a computer. Yes, it's a DVD player, some sort of media player, but it's a network appliance. And to Google and to Apple and to not Facebook, but Amazon, they know how that system works. That's what they do. So they're going to start coming to InfoComm, which they already have, in case you haven't noticed, right? And they're going to start getting into these systems. And just in case y'all forgot, Google is one of the biggest enterprise suppliers to the corporate network because of things like the G Suite, and so is Microsoft. And so they're already in your customers' arsenal, right? They're there. They're in the network. Now all I have to do is go, okay, by the way, we can also do this. And flip up a switch on a Microsoft server or a Dell server, and suddenly they have AV as a service with all these different endpoints.
So you bring up 2 points. So the one thought is that then if they are going to own the software, they are most appropriately prone to build all kinds of rich integration into whatever hardware is left standing. Right? But if we're starting from the hardware side, but we don't own the software, it's much harder for us to build the integration. For example, take Zoom, right? So Zoom has the software, and then all of a sudden all these Zoom boxes show up and everyone's trying to write to Zoom's API. Which is the head and which is the tail? The software is leading the charge. The hardware is being built around it, and we're trying to tie into Zoom's API, but Zoom has the keys. They're driving because they've got the software. Well, okay, what does that mean then, Tim? When you're saying Microsoft, Google, Apple, Netflix for business, or I don't know, these massive software companies are the ones running the software, and they're trying to press into the AV space. So are we going to expect AV endpoints, network endpoints, to sort of be trying to develop into that ecosystem?
Well, I'm sorry, just to jump in on that. So Microsoft, Google, these companies, and Apple, let's take Microsoft and Apple. For the most part, Apple doesn't really focus on developing their products for commercial, right? They let the commercial world R&D it, figure out how they're going to tie into their, use their API, tie into it, and they get someone else outsourced to integrate that. Microsoft, similar, they don't do the integration themselves. They have the people who know how to tie that network into, as Tim said, it's a device. It's an IP address. That's how they look at it. It's just an IP address. They speak to IP. And so that's on the AV side where we have to catch up. The train is running out of the station. We have to learn how to talk in IP, talk HTML, talk C#. We have to get that resource. Again, if you're going to do it, you have to be outfitted. You have to have the expertise on, in your resource pool, someone who can do network configuration, someone who can do that kind of programming. There are AV companies out there, mine, not to, pop the collar, but can
do it. Go for it. It's open.
Listen, Barracks, we pop the collar. We can do it.
Right on.
We can do it. We have the resources inside that can do network configuration, but you have to have that in order to be there and be there at the same time that the Microsoft and the Google guys are there. If you're having those conversations deep with the right people in the organization, the right IT decision makers alongside with Microsoft, you can do one of two things. You either lead that conversation or just be a part of it so you won't miss out. Yeah. And that's the key.
I'll say too, and I'm gonna bump something over to Tom here. I'm gonna play moderator for a minute, Michael.
Thank you.
With this too, I think the other thing you have to realize is if we get in this IT endpoint model, guess what IT margins are? I used to work for IBM. If we made 3 to 5 points on a PC or a laptop, single digits. Which integrators are set up for single digit margins on hardware? And who actually knows what it costs to roll a truck to site? Or who just makes sure they have enough money in the bank after charging 40, 50, 60 points on hardware to pay their technicians, and they think they're running a good business that way. This is where this becomes a very interesting thing, because if we're really going to develop AV as a service, we have to be better at running our businesses and knowing what it actually cost us to deliver service in order to price that in a way that we stay alive. Tom, NSCA, great organization you deal with. How are you seeing this within your own members, like knowledge share and stuff, to help build these new business models going forward that would support this as a thing in the first place?
Well, it's funny, Mark, because as whether we're talking about like conferences at in the industry, or we're talking about like industry publications, we've been talking for years about how important it is for companies to make this transition to more of a service-based revenue model. But when you look at the research that NSCA does, with Commercial Integrator, State of the Industry report that we team with them on, not many companies are doing a very significant amount of business on any kind of service, not just as a service, but any kind of managed service or service contracts. Actually, I have data. So like 70% of integrators do less than 10% of their business on a recurring basis. Only about 10% do more than a third of their business on a recurring basis. So these are service contracts. So no, as much as we talk about this, it's not happening as much as one would think from attending conferences and reading industry publications. So I've been listening to you guys do a really good job of explaining, like how the mindset is shifting. And the thing I keep thinking about is like, if I talk to my kids about watching a show, when I describe it, like I'll use a term like, oh, watching TV or watching a TV show. But when they think about like consuming a show or something like that, they're not really associating it with like what I'm associating it with. They're not associating it with a TV or like a cable system or something like that. They're thinking about how they get things a lot differently. And I feel like the AV integration market thinks about how they're delivering solutions to customers differently than how customers think that they're going to receive the solutions or the business outcome. They're not thinking at all about like buying a product or watching TV. You know what I mean? They're thinking about it much differently. And there's a huge pivot point that the industry has to make in order to get on the same page with their customers and be able to solve those business outcomes that they need.
Are we going to make it? I mean, I like to take cues from the other industries: security, telephony, networking. I mean, you see what's going on in other industries, and then it eventually shows up to us, right? Well, what happened with the voice over IP industry? Not every company that was a PBX that was selling phone systems could offer a voice over IP service. But there were some companies that got it. They understood the idea of like pre-provisioning endpoints and drop shipping stuff to customers and having after-hours support and after-hours phone forwarding service. And they They built a service model around leasing and financing and, you know, making everything a monthly payment. Then what happened is those companies who got it went to all the other telephone companies and said, I'll make you a deal. You become a reseller for me. You go sell my service to your customers and I'll take care of it and I'll run it. And then you just make money. And that's kind of what happened. But not every service provider, actually only a small number of them could get into the game. Because in the telephony market, you know, there was a lot more related to like guaranteed access to good, you know, network. And there was a lot of software in the back end. And it just, the typical telephony integrator was like, I don't get all that stuff. I install phone systems and handsets and punch blocks. You know, I don't get it. I wonder if that's what we're dealing with. Because Tom, I think you're totally right. I don't think the majority of us really are thinking the same way the end user is thinking if we want to even try and have something compelling yet. And I don't know if we're going to be able to. I mean, when I say we, the collective we, industry-wise.
I mean, I think the collective AV industry right now, there's no choice. There's not a lot of options. We're gonna have to, right? As the customers, the organizations, they're driving us there right now. That's what's happening. It's always the market will drive you there, and it's really driving AV there faster than it's ready for to go there.
I don't think we're going to get a chance. I don't think we have to. I don't think we're going to get a chance. Here's my thought. I think, like Mark brought out, this IT industry, who already gets this, and the telephony industry, who's been suffering because they were selling video conferencing products. Those are now all virtualized in software. So there's other industries that already understand this model who are making a lot less margin than we are, who've seen the products they were selling evaporating into software, and they need to replace that with other products and other offerings. And they look at our AV stuff, these new collaboration devices and web conferencing appliances at 20, 30 points of margin, and they're drooling. And they're like, I could build a service around that in a heartbeat. I've been doing this for 20 years.
And yeah, they drool. Listen, there's a lot of those IT guys that drooled over that 5-6 years ago and try to go down the line of AV. So here's where they hurt. AV's knowledge is not as formalized as IT. AV, most of your experience and knowledge is in the field, in the hands. It's a trade. IT, there have been I won't name them, but there have been IT companies that try to say, oh yeah, we can do this. And they couldn't. And that's when customers will call the AV person in to try to fix it because like, oh, look what he did. Look what they did. They said this, it doesn't work. It doesn't really work because it's not for them also, you know, to do it in reverse. They're not speaking the right language. They don't have the right resources. Or they tried, I know some IT companies tried to build this partner list. Oh yeah, we do AV, and then we're going to use one of these partners that we vetted out. How does an IT company figure out the proper AV partner to vet out if they've never done AV before, right? So they have a similar issue. They're drooling and they're failing, and a lot of them are dropping that AV side, or either acquiring an AV company or merging with an AV company or taking on AV departments or a small company and dropping it in their company and making it a department of their company. So that's how they're going after it. They're revamping it, recalibrating how they're doing that now. But
do you think AV as an endpoint changes that? Do you think as the AV becomes just a box that they're going to come back stronger?
My thought, and I'll let Charmaine answer too. My thought on that is that as we reduce the amount of components and the amount of things that we have to stack together to deliver AV in a space, the less those problems come up. HDMI issues that you had to sort through, or when there were, AEC or audio issues in a room, or any of those things, we had to stack things together. We need a mixer, we need some kind of DSP, we need those things. Then it was hard for IT to deliver that. I think as we get to where we only need 4 things, and I keep saying this, so I'll say it again in case nobody heard me. We need 4 things in a room for AV. That's it. We need a camera to collect video. We need a microphone to collect audio. We need a speaker to play audio. We need some type of display device to show video. Those are the only 4 things that have to be in a room anymore. And many times they're built into one thing, just like right here. It's built into your laptop on your desk during this call. And in a larger room with the community, maybe it's built into 2 or 3 devices. But as those devices become consolidated as there are less and less interconnections between them, and as the only thing to navigate, like Joey D'Angelo said, is how you're going to get the USB over there, then is it more of an IT-centric service that they don't fall on their face? And do we need to be ahead of that curve before they figure out that it got easier and they could go do it again? That's my thought. But
well, and I agree with you, Mark, but here's the thing also. That complex room system will never go away, depending on organization. If it's financial, pharma, if you have a client that has a broadcast studio, they're going to need those spaces, auditoriums, those types of spaces will always exist. So it will be, for the most part, for the everyday knowledge worker, it's going to be maybe 4 devices. But when you're talking about organizations that have their conference rooms that have all the bells and whistles, the financial industry, that's what they do. They have to have those big spaces, divisible, breakdown, training. They're always going to have it. Pharma, certain organizations, they're not going to get away from that. So when it comes to the IT playing in that, you're still going to need AV. You're still going to need an AV provider that can still do those things, because the IT side will not be able to do those types of rooms successfully. It's still there.
Cindy, since you talk to a lot of folks, I'm playing moderator again, Michael, sorry.
Cindy,
since you talk to a lot of folks, and I will definitely say, Charmaine, that's 100% right. There are always going to be these spaces, especially event spaces and large spaces, where we have this complicated interplay. What percentage, do you know, Cindy, what percentage of our market is, like integrators doing conference rooms versus these big spaces? Because I could see that happening, but does that mean that we're now all fighting for a pie that's half as big?
Oh, I think you are fighting for a pie that's less than half as big. Because a lot of the big conference rooms are going out. I think, Charmaine's certainly right that there's always going to be the organizations that want those, but I think there are fewer and fewer that are spending the money on these massive conference rooms. I mean, financial, of course. I mean, there will always be those. But I'm definitely seeing more of, I want standardization. And that's really where the whole IT side comes in. So I kind of wonder if the model is going to be IT does all of the 4 device rooms, and you have specialized AV integrators that do the big stuff, and they're separate.
Arenas.
I think they're going to be separate.
Auditoriums. Yeah, but that's a shrinking piece of the pie for AV. And I mean, we're a little off topic, but when we're saying what would be attractive to businesses, I think we're realizing that other industries or other like cousin related companies like IT industry, telephony, they're almost a little bit more properly suited to scratch that itch. I mean, when I've tried to position like our Wolf Vision products, all-in-one network AV devices. That's exactly what we're talking about. I go to integrators and I say, hey, this is great. You can pre-provision it, you can drop ship it, you can plug it into power, data, and network, and you can remotely manage it for your customer, and it gets rid of all these technical issues that you normally have to worry about. And why don't you build an AV service around this? And they say, I don't have a call center. I don't have anyone on call. My customer doesn't want to give me any access to their network. The IT company that sells them IT stuff can see everything on the network they want, but not me. I don't even have, a strategy for getting on the network. I don't have a place to store passwords for getting on people's networks. I don't have a place to store any information about their company.
And do you want to know why?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Go back to Mark's end user comment, because we don't know how to do that yet, right? And they don't trust us to do that yet, because we sell them a $50,000 room when it should be 2, because we sell them a 15-inch touch panel when all they need is the ability to plug in a laptop and it auto senses and automatically starts the system, or it's an occupancy sensor, right? There's this over design and oversell that we have gotten used to, because 20, 30 years ago, absolutely, that's what it took, but today it doesn't, right? And a lot of us have got to relearn what it means to really give the customer what they want.
And to Charmaine's point earlier, like if you don't speak the language, you're not going to, when you do get in the room with that IT person, you're not going to build the trust if you don't know the way they speak and their concerns. I mean, Charmaine's group building their IT department out is one of the smartest things you could do at this point, is have people that can be in that room. And salespeople need to be okay inviting other people in and letting or being humble enough to say, you know what, we have experts that do that. Instead of me faking my way through it in this meeting and destroying all chance of us working together, let me call in the people that we have in the organization that do this for a living.
So we've basically run out of time on the panel, and I feel like we've ended on such a low note, like we're never going to get the business. But how about this? How about let's end on a high note. How about we'll go around and each one can share, briefly, less than 30 seconds, how do we move on from here? What can we do to move on from here? Where should we focus our effort? Should we go for it and get better and stronger and more able-bodied in this matter of service? Or should we focus our energies other places? Well, we'll start with you, Tim.
CCNA. Go get your CCNA, right? Go get your certifications at other IT firms and learn. They literally do learn. And if it's not your position to learn, encourage your company to learn.
Right on. Cindy?
I think knowledge is great. Go get those certifications, but partnering. I mean, there's IT folks out there that are seeing this piece of the pie that want to get that partner. I think, what Mark said earlier, it's like, I don't do that. That's not my area of expertise. Someone does that. Partner with those people and build a stronger organization.
I love that. That's like the top takeaway, because you could do that fast. You could get in the game immediately by partnering with the right company. That's awesome. Tom?
I want to go negative before going positive, if that's okay.
Go for it.
This whole COVID-19, pandemic has been, crushing for so many businesses. But one thing that could be taken away from it is that when companies have their backs pushed against the wall, that's a good time to, really find out what you're capable of in terms of reinventing your business. And, integration firms probably know that when they come out of this, they're going to have a different looking type of company. Well, it might as well be a different looking type of company that earns recurring revenue and has better customer retention and really dives into some of these issues.
I feel like from the Breakfast Club, when he walks out and throws the fist bump, like, right on, Tom, I love it.
Nice.
Okay, Mark.
I kind of posted this on Twitter. The best time to rebuild is in the off season, right? Like, this may be the perfect, like Tom said, the perfect opportunity to do that. So I like that takeaway. My takeaway for everybody is just have better business conversations. How well do you know a company's needs by looking at their floor plan and their reflected ceiling plan? You have no clue what they do as a business. And so if you could start to develop those relationships, I know what you do as a business. I know the day-to-day problems your employees are having connecting their humanness to space through the technology in their pocket or their bag. Then all of a sudden you become somebody that's more of a partner that people are willing to talk to about how to solve a problem, as opposed to throwing your line card at them when you walk in the door.
Right on. And Charmaine?
Wow, a lot of takeaways, all better than mine. But the one thing I could say is learn how to understand a company's roadmap, right? What's their technology roadmap, their collaboration strategy, their unified collaboration, unified communications? Very huge. Most companies have one. And if you talk on that level, that will get you in there. If you're talking, and don't talk on that level to just help them direct you and give you hints as to what you should do. You should be the one directing that conversation. And it's on a different level. It's on a different technology decision maker. You have to be able to understand their roadmap on an enterprise level. That's very important in order for you to get in there.
Absolutely amazing. I love how just transparent and raw the conversation was. Like, it's kind of there's been a lot of flowery speech about AV as a service, but we just really tore the roof right off this thing and looked inside. That was amazing. So first of all, thank you to our special guests. You have been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing your insight and wisdom with us. And for our audience here at the VCX conference, we thank you for enjoying such an awesome day of conversation and panel discussions with us. all of these live stream sessions are getting converted into on-demand video for you to go and consume. It's all going to be sitting here in the VCX conference portal for the next few months. So highly recommend you check that content out. Also check out our virtual booth tour. And then starting right now, in about 10 minutes, we're going to begin our virtual happy hour, and we're going to start our tailgate party for InfoComm 2020 Connected over Zoom. So dive in, find something to drink. I'm at a college, so all I can get is a Pepsi, but find something. Let's hang out a little bit and unwind and get ready for tomorrow. Thank you for joining. I'm Michael Lisi. On behalf of my hosts, have a great rest of the afternoon.